Hello and welcome to Soul Cleaning with Chang. I'm really glad I put out yesterday's video. And this morning I am feeling very different than yesterday, which is a good news. It's very I feel lifted, and just the dreams that I had this morning, and not just the dreams, I've been dreaming a lot of very vivid dreams lately, and in the morning, not late at night. So that's an excuse for my oversleeping some of the days. But I just had a lot of dots connected, a lot of inspiration, a lot of ahas, and despite the logic that will say otherwise, I directly attribute that to the on-camera processing of difficult, confusing, even chaotic emotions that I did yesterday. And I struggled to find words to describe because, well, in a lot of ways, those emotions defy description or categorization, boxing in. And that is actually a representation of our human lives. Our human journey here is really hard to describe the fullness of what we're going through. And maybe that is why human stories, drama is so popular. Like, we can't get enough of it, seems like, as a collective in popular culture. There is a certain immersion that happens. Like, I used to teach English to Koreans, and in language learning there is a concept of immersion where you fully immerse in an environment where the language you're trying to learn is spoken and not your native language. So the target language, or the language you're trying to learn, is spoken exclusively. So, for example, when you're trying to learn French, go to France, or even better, not the global cities like Paris, but go to the rural areas where really there's no way to get around except for speaking French, right? So, in that parallel, I think the reason for our coming down here and immersing in this human experience that can be at times difficult to describe, even like put a finger on what it's like, is that just like immersion in language learning, there is something that can only be learned by immersing ourselves in the full human experience. And even for supposedly older souls, like some of us. And so maybe you feel like you're here on a mission, and that may be true. I think that's true for myself as well. But the mission may look a little different than what we imagine a typical mission in a human sense would be. So for me, one of my recent realization was that my mission may just be, I talked about this in earlier videos, my mission could be having as much fun as possible in my human experience, and that will fulfill what I'm here to fulfill. And that, I think, is true in general for all of us, really. Like, regardless of the soul age or the soul sophistication, how advanced or how evolved. I don't know the right word because it's not linear, but still, how much previous experience our souls has. And sort of that difficult public emotional processing that I did yesterday opened me up to the realization that sometimes I talked a lot in recent videos about the mind's inability to choose a side between two extremes. And that a higher form of intelligence than the logical mind is our emotional capacity. And on the other side of that emotional storm, as it could be sometimes, and the world of emotions, well, the realm of emotion is sometimes attributed to the element water. So on the other side of that troubled water, we may be able to, well, we will come to a sudden realization, an aha moment. And that may be that's an understanding that goes beyond the logical mind. So for example, I could share so much, and it's my human vehicle is kind of slow compared to like how fast the dots could connect when it happens. I can't summon it at will. Maybe later. Maybe I don't know. Maybe if I get more advanced in my spiritual evolution, but I can't like relay it fast enough in human language. All I have received just this morning or during my sleep when that processing happened. So sleep is very important. A passage that I read this morning. These days I am reading a book in Kashmir Shaivism, an ancient text explained, annotated by a gentleman named Lakshmanju. And in that ancient text, one way, because that text introduces something like over 100 ways to access the Supreme, which in the Shaivist tradition is Shiva. For all intents and purposes, that's the same as God, the source, or the universe, depending on the tradition, but the one source. Let me actually quote directly from the book. Opening up my Kindle here. Let's see. Okay. This is verse 100, the 103rd verse. 103rd verse. One's mind should neither be engrossed in suffering nor in pleasure. You should know the middle state. Between both, then the reality alone remains. And this is the 101st verse. If one makes one's mind stable in the various states of desire, anger, greed, delusion, intoxication, or envy, then the reality alone will remain, which is underlying them. And here, in both verses that I quoted, reality is written in with a capital R. So Shiva, or God, the source, supreme, infinite intelligence, prime creator, as some may call it. And what's surprising is that it, at least the way I take it, it indicates how, well, the first one that I quoted is between pleasure and pain. Or, well, in other, there are other people who talks about something similar. God is beyond both the good and evil. Neither good nor evil is God. And you may hear some noise. There's a, cleaning happening outside. That robot, cleaning robot thing. Anyways, we may think that God is in the good and not in the bad or the evil. And that is the way our dualistic mind can make God, can make out God to be. God is in them all. If God is somewhere and not anywhere else, then it wouldn't be God, because God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. And so the second passage that I quoted, which actually comes earlier in the book, it actually goes further. If one makes one's mind stable in the various states of desire, anger, greed, delusion, intoxication, or envy. I mean, it is not explicit in the passage, but to me, it sounds like God is in that everywhere. God is even in those states. Even when you are in the states of desire, anger, greed, delusion, intoxication, or envy, God is still there. So I think one way to describe what I want to describe is that even one of the lessons that we can take through the difficult emotional landscape of our human experience could be like this. Know that God is everywhere, even during the storm. God is with you even during the storm. And of course, it's much more difficult to do in the midst of the human experience. When we're in the spirit world, disincarnated, we're closer to the spirit. We're closer to the. We can actually experience the spiritual nature of reality much better, much easier than in a human body. So it would be much. It wouldn't be much of a challenge to feel that God is with you everywhere. So it could be said as a kind of a training that builds spiritual stamina, to build an unshakable trust, even in the absence of any such evidence for the trust. And so the title I chose for yesterday's video was the betrayal. Well, not word for word, but I had betrayal and God in the same title. Maybe not in the same exact, not directly together, but sometimes it feels like this human realm is a God-forsaken world. That is how I felt almost on a daily basis when I was deathly ill. And this human reality on Earth is in many ways a very, very difficult reality. And yes, there have been many atrocious deeds done against the human collective. Sometimes by the human collective itself, but sometimes by external forces. Many of which we're feeling the effects even today in our bodies, in the form of inherited emotional baggage from our lineage, but sometimes actually in physiological form, as in toxins and pathogens, bugs, viruses. And chances are, if you're watching this now, before I got famous, we all came down here fully knowing how compromised this realm is. And so what is to be gained here? Spiritual stamina? I don't know. Even when it makes no sense, as I just said. I said, I don't know. to the intellectual mind. As we go through our emotions, of movement, an actual movement happens, and without knowing how we got there, we reach a new level of awareness after a difficult emotional experience. And that goes beyond the realm of the logical mind. We can't logically process or even try to predict the pattern of how things will happen and what we'll get out of that experience. And so, in many cases, we won't know the point of something in our human experience, before we actually go through it, and on the other side of it, through the processing, which means the feeling of all the different feelings, that is difficult to describe. Like I did yesterday in that video, that like makes no sense. Like, it's not coherent, it's not linear, that's for sure. Some of what we're here to do, I feel like, is to optimize the human experience. Because one of the dreams that I had this morning, I play classical piano as a hobby, and I was back in high school, and my high school was a kind of a special high school, directly under managed by the Korean government. Okay, not through the hierarchy, but directly. It's the only one in the country. Anyways, it was a school for gifted children in science and math. So, compared to other average high schools, we were very well stocked, well provided. And so, in my dream, I was back in high school, and it actually is it's a repeating theme. I dream of that often, of something like this often, going back to the high school, my high school, and something has to do with playing piano. And often in a dream that features my high school, I will find not just one but multiple grand pianos, which is what happened in this morning's dream. But I test played all of them, and none of those was to my satisfaction. Okay, they looked fine, they looked good, but when I actually played them, each of them had a flaw. And I think that's one of the ways how I could describe my life has been. I sampled lots of experiences. They looked good on the outside before I actually engaged in them. And when I started actually testing them, it wasn't really good enough. And maybe that is because my standards got higher and higher as maybe back then when I played those in high school age, maybe it was acceptable. Maybe they would have been acceptable to my level of playing back then. But since then, 20 years. For 20 years, I have been playing. I have been practicing. So my playing has gotten like so much better. And so now my standards has gotten higher. Not just that, but I'm more sensitive. And so for sensitive beings like us, we can differentiate between the subtleties of each human experience. And so for me, I've wondered why I couldn't just settle down to a humdrum existence like so many other human beings do. And sometimes, well, not just sometimes, it's been one of the core themes of my life. Like how I want to engage more, live more, but I seem to be not able to mix in with average humans. So what is going on? Like, why am I always like a hermit that's separated, distance from where the action is happening? And that was me being wanting to be like an average human, where I couldn't be. I wasn't born like that. I am not like that. I'm not. No matter how hard I try, I can't be just average human because I'm so sensitive. I can't pretend nothing's off when something is off, and I pick up, and I'm picking up that something is off, and sometimes even what exactly is off. So you may have heard in some other YouTube videos that sensitivity actually is not a liability, but it's a superpower, and I agree. But at the same time, there comes with the price. Just like you can't expose a precision instrument out in the open with a lot of stimulus, then you will just fry and wreck that precision instrument. So for example, when let's say you have a scale that can measure micrograms, which is 1/1,000,000th of a gram, I think. You won't use it as a kitchen scale. You will ruin it, right? A kitchen scale is would need to measure things in grams, but when you use a microgram scale for that purpose, it will just flow out because it's too much for that sensitive scale. And that's how I am viewing myself these days. That is why I need my own time, an ample space, time and space for myself to be able to maintain my integrity. And I don't know when I would exactly come down and start mingling with the world. I know I need to not blow my whole system if I were to be any useful. And so that's one of the dots that I connected this morning. I need to accept what I am more fully, even more fully, and be okay not being able to be average, just like other people. And that also involves my life unfolding in a way that defies any kind of average human description. And that's what drives me crazy so often. I have no reference. Even in biographies of like legendary people, maybe I could draw some parallel, but no one legendary life looks the same as another. So they all look different. And therefore, I may be able to identify with some elements in their lives. But like my life would be one unique life. And that is how every life, I feel like, was meant to be. So therefore, by definition, I can't be average, or no one can be average. No one can be average. So I feel like today's message is kind of complete for now. Thank you for the encouraging words. And I am here to continue. I think yesterday was a kind of a difficult hump that I needed to come over, like climb over. And now I feel like these daily videos will become somewhat easier. And I'm really glad that I just, came out raw. And unfiltered, shared an unfiltered version of my truth at the moment. Yeah, because there is no good or evil, or God is like in both of those seeming extremes. Anyways, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.